Um, just do a sound check, so maybe just tell me your name.
You say hello or don't say hello? Oh, I'm Pete Ross.
That's perfect. That's
All
all
right.
I needed. Thank
Is
you
that
so
it?
much. Give me one sec. Okay. I'm rolling.
So whenever you're ready, say your name,
Okay.
introduce yourself.
I'm Pete Ross. I started working for Bethlehem Steel at the Spurs Point plant on June the 1st, 1969, when there was approximately 31,000 employees. My last day of work at the plant, well, I started as a laborer, by the way, and my last day of work at the plant was July the 20th, 2012, and I ended my career there as the director of the Employee Assistance Program.
How did you come to start working at Sparrows Point?
Well, I initially, right out of high school, came to Sparrows Point as a summer employee, and my intention was just to work for the summer and then go to college, but as I just said, I wound up staying there for 43 years because the money was good and opportunities to learn things were there, so I stayed. As I say, I started out as a laborer, and because the opportunity was there to transfer, and I seemed to have the ability to learn from books, I transitioned over the next 43 years through many production jobs, and also many maintenance jobs, meaning electricians, mechanics, crane operators. So in the course of my 43 years, I worked throughout the whole plant, which came to benefit me at the end when I switched to the Employee Assistance Program, because I knew all the employees throughout the whole plant. And so that made me more effective in dealing with employees when they came through the Employee Assistance Program for problems. The first part of my career, the first 15 years, I was probably in the street more than, meaning laid off, more than I worked. But the last 25 years straight, there was never a layoff that affected me anyway, up until, as I said earlier, July the 20th, when the plant went down for good. How I got involved with the Employee Assistance Program, because at the time I was working as an electrician in the hot mill, what they call a control tech. I developed over the years a problem myself with chemicals, drugs, and alcohol. And so I started reading a lot of things to how to deal with the chemical dependency problem as I guess a Band-Aid approach to dealing with my own personal issues. Now, I've always been in the people helping business through my neighborhoods and my community and all that. So, but at work, I was focusing on fixing things, equipment. That's the jobs I did throughout the majority of my employment down here at the plant. So when I decided to finally help myself and go through the program, the Employee Assistance Program was in existence at the time, which started in the 80s as an alcohol program. I went through it myself March the 1st, 1986, which I just celebrated 27 years in recovery myself. But anyway, after coming out of treatment, of 28-day treatment, I got involved with the program down here at the plant. I was also involved with one up in the city, and the two people that were working at the Employee Assistance Program at the time, they were both recovering alcoholics, and they had no drug experience. So that was one of the components I brought to the process. And I eventually took over the program as the third director of the program in, I would say, 1985. Well, not, I'm sorry, 1995. And that's what I did for the rest of the career I had down at the plant. And that really was, I found out was my true calling down at the plant. Not that I couldn't fix equipment, but being involved with the people. And once again, by having the benefit of working throughout the whole plant the previous years, I pretty much knew everybody in the plant. And so that gave them a certain comfort level to come to me for assistance. Now, one part of the problem as an EAP was, I'll say only probably 10 to 20% of the people came there voluntarily, meaning most of the people that came to the Employee Assistance Program, they had already lost their job when they got there. And so it made it doubly hard to help people initially. But I developed the philosophy to people first, trying to help the person, then try to save their job, then try to save their family. So throughout the next 24 years that I worked as an EAP, I constantly evolved the program, expanded it out to helping the families also, and took a holistic approach to treatment development, meaning not just deal with the drugs and alcohol, but help people with financial issues, relationship problems. So it became a full compulsive program that became very effective. And during the course of time, I developed a relationship with management throughout the whole plant and with the union that they felt that I was effective in helping people. Now, I was part of what was called the medical department. We had an implant medical department at the time, and so I was supposed to be a component of the medical department, which wound up being a very valuable asset to them because a lot of people saw the medical department as an arm of the company and that they were really an agent of the company and was really working against them. So when they got their most severe problems, they normally brought me in. So I wound up being the troubleshooter for the company and the union and the medical department, meaning dealing with people's issues, meaning their personal issues, their job issues. I got involved with workplace violence, domestic violence, just all the way across the board. And so it became a very, healing process for me also, because not only was I helping other people, but it helped me in the same process. So I think that, if anything, that would probably be my most, or the legacy that I feel that I supplied to the company. You know, I was definitely a better counselor than I was an electrician or a production worker. I would say I was barely capable. I was capable, but I really shined as a counselor down there. And it was a very much needed thing. You know, I was the third director of the EAP, and there was a lot of problems that came in at the end, but it still became an effective process, meaning the program, because as we evolved into the 2000s, you had to start dealing with the insurance companies, and also the attitude at the plant changed, meaning from management. They became less supportive of the program, meaning that they felt that chemical dependency was, and I dealt with mental health issues also. So I became very knowledgeable dealing with the community as far as other agencies and other providers, as far as dealing with mental health and chemical dependency. But the company started taking a more, I'll say, less supportive approach to the process because they felt it was a self-induced problem, meaning people created the problem themselves. And so they really started minimizing the, I'll say, financial support and the opportunities for people to get treatment. But we found a way to get it done. And I guess, if anything, if I have any regrets about the thing, was not being able to save everybody, but that's a realistic approach. I understand you can't save everybody because people have to develop the desire to save themselves for one thing, and they have to actually do the work. I found out that I just can't fix everybody. But the Employee Assistance Program became a very vital part of the plant because it gave the employees or the employer back a whole employee, those who were successful at the process. And more important to me, and I believe to the other people, that it put some families back together. See, I kept in mind that I'm not just dealing with an individual, I'm dealing with a whole family attached to it. And as I was getting ready to say, if I have any regrets about the whole thing, those who weren't successful, that lost their jobs. Because we've had some that not only lost their jobs, but went back out using and lost their lives, died in the process and all that. But in the end, I think the program was more effective than it, as far as for the employees and therefore for the company itself. Now, it was very traumatic the last 12 years for a lot of people mentally because the company went through a lot of transitions. And I've been here and a lot of other people for the last 20 years. that the plant was going down and getting to the state that it was. But we kept kind of sort of rising like the phoenix. Since 2002, it kept switching owners. I think we had 5 owners in the last 12 years. But the family finally got to the point where it shut down for good. And that was very traumatic to a lot of people. And with that said, the EAP work continues. I mean, I'm doing the same thing that I was doing, except I'm just not getting compensated from the company. And that's good because, I mean, people still need help. The union's still helping people, certain union members, and so am I. I'm just going back to doing what I was doing before I became an EAP. And the whole key is trying to help people transition to life without Sparrows Point, because that was a very vital piece of the community. I mean, myself, I had several relatives that worked down there, a couple of children that had worked there also, many relatives, neighbors, and most people feel that it was a very vital point to, or had a very vital impact on them being able to support their families. I know it did mine. Also, you know, put people through school, buy homes, just build a life. And it's kind of like a culture shock for most people. I mean, even now, I started down there at 18, a month after I turned 18, and I'll be 62 this year. So I was getting to that point of transitioning out anyway. But I probably would have worked longer if the plant would have still been there. I probably would have worked till 65. I felt like it was a job that I could do that much longer, and I still had an impact. I was still helping people. And that was the whole key when I started thinking about, well, you're 60 now, it's a time to transition out. But I say, well, as long as I feel like I'm still effective, that I still can help people, there's still a reason to be here, not just for a paycheck, that I would stay. But you know, life sometimes has its own process, and it may have saved me from myself, I don't know. But I'm comfortable with the transition out. I feel a little bad for the younger people who are at a point where they have to get out and retrain themselves, because down Sparrows Point we used to call it Fantasy Island. It was kind of unrealistic, meaning you got overcompensated to a degree. Now, it was a dangerous place to work. The environment wasn't that good, but it compensated you pretty good compared to a lot of jobs, meaning the pay, and it was a place where you didn't have to, we got health benefits for your entire family, you didn't have to pay for them. I enjoyed it being a union environment. I've been working all my life since 12 years old, but I've never worked in a union environment before. But the process that was in place and the union negotiated benefits gave me the idea that I would never want to work anywhere that was non-union, based on, I saw the values, I looked at the history of the union, and it's very beneficial for most people. My experience has been great down there. I'm in the process of going to school right now, which because of the plant shut down because of steel imports, we had the opportunity through the government to retrain ourselves or go to school. So I'm in the process of going to school I never got a degree in chemical dependency. I had probably 50 certificates. Always took certificate courses. So I decided, because the opportunity's there now, to go ahead and get a degree. That's what I'm in the process of doing right now. Not that I plan on using it. I consider myself retired at this point and would do some other things on the side, but I guess I'm just taking the opportunity because it's there. And any questions? I guess.
How would you say that the Dundalk community's changed since the point's closed?
Well, just from an outside observer, I don't live in Dundalk. I've seen a lot of businesses disappear. Over the last, like I said, I worked at the plant for 43 years. There used to be a lot of treatment centers I was involved with down here. A lot of them closed, and part of that process was because of managed care came in, a system called managed care, where they manage treatment actually, or manage insurance. And a lot of the businesses weren't able to survive. And as the plant constantly lost its population, like I said, when I started, it was 41,000 people, 31,000, I'm sorry. And at the end, it was 2,000 people working down there. And so the businesses couldn't, with the employees not being there, the businesses, a lot of them couldn't survive. And I saw a lot of businesses shut down. I saw a lot of people, of course, as the people got younger, I mean, as they grew, they moved out of the community, and a lot of the older people went into, I guess, senior apartments or whatever. And it just seemed like the biggest impact was on businesses. A lot of them shut down. That was a long answer, but.
I like long answers.
Go ahead.
If you could say two things about your entire experience at the point, what would they be?
Two things. I'll say it was rewarding because I had an impact on the prosperity of the plant by helping the people, helping employees become whole again. And I'll say it was, overall, it was just a beautiful experience for me because I learned a lot of things, developed a lot of skills, not only occupational skills, I've learned a lot of people skills. And I run into people constantly now that, told me how much I helped them and impact their family and what they still doing. And so that's kind of rewarding. Like I say, I did the EAP stuff for 24 years, and that I would say is rewarding, and I feel good about my experience down there.
Well, I think you actually covered most of my questions.
You did cover
Okay.
a lot. It's great. I'll ask one.
All right.
Would you say, is there a connection between working at Sparrows Point and, for lack of a better phrase, chemical dependency?
Yes, it is. Actually, I guess I left that part out. When I first started there, I started as a laborer on what's called the blast furnaces, and all the guys had this saying, because I developed my chemical dependency down there at the plant after I'd been there a year and a half. Like I was 19. I went down there the month after I turned 18, and I had my first drink, and my first drug was marijuana down there on the plant. And they used to have a saying, oh, you have to drink when you work here, because it would clear the steel dust out of your throat to keep you from getting cancer. That's what that was, like an inside joke. And that was true. Most of the people drank. And then the younger crowd that came in with me through the 70s, that's when more of the drug thing came in. And so there was a correlation because part of my helping treat people and taking a holistic approach, I understood the impact of working turn work on your body, working shift work. Some people will work 3 shifts in 1 week, dealing with that, dealing with the family, dealing with the pace of a lot of the production in the plant. People started using artificial things, I'll say stimulants, to try to keep themselves going, and that developed a lot of chemical dependency in a lot of people. So part of the approach to treating people or helping them treat themselves was taking that holistic approach. There's a physical, mental, and emotional component to this. You have to hydrate properly. You got to find a way to get the proper amount of rest, that kind of thing like that. And so it definitely had an impact, in my opinion, on a lot of people that may have been, I would say, what they consider themselves a casual user. They transition into the addictive level of their usage. Like I said, it definitely was that for me.
Yeah, I'm just personally curious, how do people drink and work in such a dangerous place?
Well, how they do it real
there
easily.
must have been accidents.
Yeah, there were accidents. As you see, I don't know if you noticed, right out in front of this union hall, there's a monument with people that came into the plant and never made it out alive that day. Now, some of them were my former clients. Now, whether they were under the influence at the time, I don't know. I personally had, before I got myself together, came into the plant under the influence. Most people did, they used. Because if you work 3 to 11 and you say people, and that was a big thing. I used to do presentations here at the union meetings quite a bit, particularly during the summertime, because people had the tendency to not think anything was wrong with, You know, they working 3 to 11 or 11 to 7, and they'd be out cutting their grass, doing whatever, drinking, doing all that kind of stuff, and then they realize the impact of coming into the plant with it still in your system. See, most people had the impression, well, if I'm not drunk or in their mind high, then it doesn't impact my performance at work. And so that's how a lot of people wind up at the EAP later on, because they had an accident or they caught them sleep and they send them over and tested them and they were positive, because they based it on levels, not how you feel is impacting your motor skills. And people saw it as just natural progression. You do whatever you're doing, you come to work, and if it's still in you, I can still do my job. And that was part of the denial process I had to break through with a lot of people to successfully help them, that, you know, you're violating safety rules, for one thing, by coming into the plant under the influence just as well as you would be driving. Because and that was a hard impact, because people had did this for so many years. Very few people that wound up at the EAP, that wasn't their first experience coming into the plant, what they call unfit. It had went on for years and years and years. And a lot of people in the plant was aware of people that had problems. And they just looked past it long as the people were successfully able to do their job, somewhat successfully. And production or management normally didn't get involved until it became a problem to them. Absenteeism, accidents, stuff like that. So.
Any other? That's a nice one.
If I were working in your department, what might I hear and see in a typical day?
What you mean if you were working at the EAP? Mm-hmm. What you would see is, on a typical day, you would get, you would see somebody come out, you would get a call from the medical department. My office was right next to the medical department. You would get a call from the medical department or the union, or sometime from a family member. I got calls from, most of the referrals came from the union, the medical department, sometime management, or a family member saying that a certain person's having a problem. They're messing up their money. They might have had an accident, might have gotten locked up. Because part of the process, I used to go bail people out of jail, help people get on work release. We had plenty of people at the plant. So you would get a call from somebody, and then the employee would come in. Now, I also worked with employees. I expanded and started working with employees' families, also getting their family members in treatment, because this is a family disease. Normally, what I found out over the years, that if one person had a chemical dependency problem, normally it transitioned into their other family members, or either there was a counter mental health issue related to the person dealing with the chemical dependency problem. So employee will be sent in, and typically they will be suspended, meaning their job is gone. So the first thing you would have to do is do assessment of the employee, and keeping in mind that they're not going to tell you everything that's going on. They're not going to tell you 100% of the truth. So you learn over a period of time, you would, as an employee there, to kind of ad-lib a little bit of the stuff that they're telling me, read between the lines. Just like this person, when you get to asking them, how much do you drink? And they say 4 beers, I used to multiply it by 3 to get a more accurate account, or how often they use, or things like that. Then you ask about the impact on the family. So you would do assessment on what they tell you, and then make a decision on what type of treatment they need. In most cases, I would advocate for inpatient treatment, because that takes them out of the cycle and puts them in a controlled environment where they can isolate and work on themselves and their issues, and not deal with the family issues that they've developed over that period of time. And then also, once I set up a treatment for the person, and a lot of times you would get a lot of resistance, because people were afraid to make that transition or move into the unknown. And that was people that first time around. And one of the things that was typical at the plant was repeat occurrences, meaning we had multiple people coming through for multiple treatments, which over the last probably 10 years of the plant, that became less and less, because the company became less tolerable of it. And as an EAP, you had to learn how to work under the radar and still help people without the company being aware of it. I'll say it that way. And sometimes that means it was more risky because you had to let them still be working. That became a little challenge too, because if somebody, I did develop a policy in there. If you told me you used, I would tell you can't go back in the plant. I can't let you go back in. I'm gonna have to call, or I can't let you drive. I would have to take a person home. So you would see all kinds of things coming in, people with mental health issues, people with chemical dependency issues. But 90%, if not 95% of people you would see on a typical day, when they came in that door, their job was already gone, meaning suspended. And their primary focus would be on getting their job back. But from an EAP holistic approach, our approach at the EAP would be, no, we got to get you whole, deal with the issue, then we work on your job. And then if we're fortunate, or you fortunate, then you may save your family. That's something you got to do once you become whole again, and then get your job. So, and then after you set up your treatment for your employee, then you would typically try to get the real story, call management, check. A lot of times I would pull a 5-year history on a person, the attendance, and then you would see a pattern of missing time, right after paydays and things like that. And you would also get the other story on why they were suspended. Because typically, their version of why they lost their job is different from management's version. And so that gives you a more balanced approach on what you're dealing with and how to effectively help the person. And the approach from an EAP would be always deal with the chemical component first. Then you deal with the mental, then you deal with the lack of manageability. And that's how it starts unfolding. And so any typical day, you may have multiple people, males, females. Like I said, most of them suspended. Sometimes you're getting called from an irate mate. Sometimes you're getting called from somebody that's locked up. Somebody's been in an accident. That was one of the beautiful things about the job. To me, it was never what's called a typical day. Anything can happen, and it normally did. And there were some days were a little more stable than others, and some days it was like nonstop. Phone constantly ringing. Workplace violence issues, got involved with a lot of them. Because as the tensions build in the plant, because production levels were pushed and people were already overworked and felt underpaid. And that was another funny thing about the plant. You could take a survey of the plant and some people would say it's the best place in the world to work, and some would say it's the worst place based on how they were feeling at that moment. And as people got pushed harder and harder and the workforce got smaller and smaller, people became more stressed out, more mental health issues. And I learned a lot about dual dependency in this process, because a lot of people that had, I would say, was diagnosed as mental health issues or undiagnosed mental health issues seem to have a tendency to self-medicate to deal with particularly the workplace issues. And then a lot of people got what we would call between a rock and a hard place, meaning they developed workplace issues that carried over to their personal lives or personal issues that they brought into the plant. I tried a part of the holistic approach to try to help people get themselves together. I used to try to advocate for them to leave their issues at the gate, meaning whatever your workplace issues, try to leave them here, don't take them home. That's why you're creating problems at home. Or whatever issues you got at home, try not to bring them in here, because people typically project their issues into whatever environment they're in at the time. So back to your main question, any given day, anything can happen, but it always has to do with somebody being suspended from work, and you have to decide, is this strictly a mental health issue? Is it chemical component? Because a lot of people typically will try to hide the chemical component of their problem and the situation they created. They'll stretch it as long as they can to try to insist that it's a mental health. I'm just stressed out, I'm just depressed. And sometimes it would take some, and you learn over a period of time, those that you don't already know or have heard about. Because a lot of times when people get to the plant, I've already heard that they've been having issues. And I've gone and approached them, nah, ain't nothing wrong, blah, blah, blah. And most people wouldn't do anything about their problem until they had to, meaning their job was gone, or they was locked up, or their wife threw them out. And most of the time, it's a whole combination of the thing. So.
Were there any departments that were more likely to send people to the EAP than others?
Well, no. I would just say generally no. What it was, well, there was some that was less likely, I would say that, meaning a lot of the maintenance departments, meaning mechanics, electricians, carpenters, they seem to have the tendency to be more tolerant of the employees that they knew had a problem because of the way the system was set up, there was no production time frame to meet. Meaning maintenance people could go in, if there's a repair, they could do the repair, and there's normally a crew, so you could cover for each other. So typically, the maintenance departments were a little more lenient. They would let somebody go in the corner and sleep it off. They normally only addressed their issues when they became accidents or the attendance became such a big problem that they had to deal with it because the weight was coming to them, or the other co-workers finally had enough and would complain. Now in production, it was a little more, they had more of a tendency when they had to deal with it because if a person couldn't keep up with the production line or had accidents. See, the company developed a policy, if they caught you sleep, you got sent for what they call the fitness for duty test. Now the way it was supposed to be set up is you sent to the dispensary, the medical department, and they supposed to do like a field sobriety test. Supposed to ask you questions, do all this thing, and then they supposed to make a judgment on whether to actually physically test you. Now the way the plant was set up, if they say we're going to test you, you did a urine test for drugs, and you also did a breathalyzer. Now when I first started at the plant, everything was done on a urine test, and I was part of the process of convincing the company and the union to transition at least to the breath alcohol test for alcohol, because a lot of people were getting fired and suspended for the urine alcohol test, which alcohol can show up in your blood 24 hours later. But at least with the breathalyzer, it had to be within a 4 or 6 hour time of consumption of the alcohol. So when a person was sent for a fitness for duty test, if the company decided or the medical department decided they need to be tested, once the person got tested, if they tested positive, then they were sent to me. And then that's when the EAP process would start. Then the person under the contract in the fitness for duty policy, if a person refused testing or refused to go over there, they were automatically suspended. And then they still wind up at the EAP. Once a lot of times they would run and just disappear. You had to go find them, or the union rep would find them and then bring them back. Then we would start the process either way. If the company caught you sleep, if you had an accident, or if in their opinion you were acting other than what they perceived as normal that day. And that became a big problem for a lot of people because they felt like management was picking on them, or somebody just didn't like me today, that's why they sent me over here. And they would initially refuse the test, but most of the time, I would say 99 out of 100 times, if a person would resist it to being tested, once asked, there's an issue. And they normally, when you get them to take the test, they would turn up positive. And so once again, the company or the medical department would bring me in to try to convince the person to cooperate, to help themselves. And most of the time I could get through to them because, like I say, I knew most people, and a lot of people, many years, when I finally met people under those circumstances, unfortunately, they knew my name. A lot of people at the plant at the end, especially the younger generation that came in, I'd say around 2000 or something, they knew my name, but they didn't know who I was. They wouldn't know me if they saw me until they saw me at the union meetings, which a lot of them didn't come to, or they got themselves in a jam. So.
What about management? Were they, did you have equal amounts of people that you were helping from management or from? Well,
the management component was slim, meaning the people I was involved with through management. Now there was some upper level management that did send some lower level management people to me, but as a whole, now the policy and the program was supposed to be set up to help all employees, and I kept emphasizing that point. And that was important to the hourly employees because they felt like they were being singled out and management wasn't being addressed the same way. But the policy was set up for everybody. But I would say I probably only dealt with, over the course of time, maybe 20% of the management people that had problems, because it was well known that management could leave out the plant and go have their liquid lunches and come back. They held them to a separate criteria. And a lot of management didn't want to deal with an hourly person, which I was. But I did deal with some. I guess management didn't have no choice and they sent them. And I'm just effective with them because the process is the process. I mean, if you want to help and you want to keep your job and you want to stay alive, you follow the process. And like I said, a lot of people, because everybody had the opportunity, even hourly employees, they didn't have to use the EAP. And I advocated that quite a bit. I said, anytime you come to the EAP, nothing is authorized until you say, let's move forward. Now, I give them options. They could go call the 800 number insurance and set up everything on their own, but it was more effective to go through the EAP because I learned how to get through a lot of roadblocks, have relationships. I could get people in treatment automatically, same day, things like that, versus them going through a long process. Because one of the things when you're dealing with chemical dependency or mental health, particularly when a person has lost their job, time is very important to get the process started, because the company became less and less tolerant of somebody resisting the help when it's there. And so management, back to your question, seemed to try, most of them, go under the radar. Now, I've dealt more with management from a family perspective, meaning helping their family members more than the management itself that's still working at the plant, meaning calling for a child with a problem or spouses. Did a lot of work with spouses and dependent children. And the spouses always seemed to have been the hardest to work with because I didn't have any, what I used to call a hammer. I didn't have nothing to kind of force their hand when they were resistant, didn't want to comply. At least with employees, you had their job that they had to, try to get in line with. Spouses, they were very problematic, let alone the dependent children. But I did get calls from management couldn't, and only because they tried themselves and wasn't effective dealing with their own child. That's a problem a lot of times when the child is being rebellious or caught up. They very resistant to their parent, and a lot of times, I would go around people's houses, talk to the child. I did plenty interventions, and I'm still doing it. And I don't know, I seem to be pretty effective most of the time, at least to get people to attempt to help themselves. Now, one of the things about chemical dependency, there's no guarantees. And I advocated that to the company. Yeah, people successful, damn, but it's a day at a time, it really is. And most of the people that lost their job at the plant, the only way, once treatment was, I'll say they were stabilized, the company gave them the opportunity to keep their employment through what was called a last chance letter, which was a 5-year probationary letter, meaning they had to be randomly tested for 5 years. I did develop some on-site group sessions. They used to be twice a week, and then they evolved down because of lack of participation to 1 day a week where people could come on company time. Then it became less and less. As I said earlier, the company became less and less supportive of the program, and they started saying, well, we're not going to allow them to come over on company time. Their last chance letters say they have to come over on their own time. But the EAP was accessible. I made myself 24 hours accessible to everybody. They could call me anytime on the phone. I used to get called in the plant 3 o'clock in the morning if somebody was considered unfit, that's working 11 to 7. I would come in, address the issue, and escort them home, transport them home, and then bring them back the next day, pick them up and bring them back. Because they were once a person is declared unfit by law, we're not supposed to let them drive, not supposed to let them go back in the plant. So I had a lot of that going on. And as I was saying, once you was suspended and the company was going to allow you to come back to work, you had this 5-year letter. You had to attend self-help meetings with AA or NA meetings a week and get proof of that. I had slips I had people, they had to sign and bring them in. They had to come to the group session at least once a month, which it was a weekly session. And they could come in and talk to me one-on-one anytime at the EAP or call me on the phone. And that's how the EAP kind of worked a lot. I got a lot of anonymous calls. Oh, I'm calling for a friend, blah, blah, blah. How does this work? How does that work? And you explain things like that. And eventually that person, even if you didn't know who they were, eventually they would wind up over there because, once again, most people don't deal with their issues until they're forced to deal with them. And that's just how the EAP worked.
Any other questions? So I was going to ask one last. Yeah, sure. One last question, more on a general level.
Okay.
What, Sparrows Point is closed.
Right.
The buildings may go away in the future.
Yes.
That landscape will change.
Right.
What remains? What's the legacy that remains in that more general sense?
I guess the legacy that remains of the plant itself, that it was a source of income for many, many generations of people. It was there 100 years, a little over 100 years, and a lot of people had the opportunity, so-called uneducated or unskilled people, to go to a place and develop some skills and get some benefits and some income to not only support themselves, but to take care of their families. And it had a generational impact. I mean, a lot of people went through colleges based on the money that came out the plant. A lot of people had access to medical benefits that didn't have any no other way, because one of the things at the plant was we never had to pay for health benefits. That was a union negotiated benefit. And so the overall impact is it affected generations. I mean, I'm sure a lot of the doctors and lawyers or other people, well, I know a lot of them, and a lot of politicians whose parents got them where they are based on the money coming out of the plant. So overall, that 100 years that it was there, it impacted the whole community. The people that lived around the plant, most of them worked there. It used to be a whole town down there at the plant to support the people, and then eventually they moved out of there. But I don't know how much longer the impact will go once the plant and the landscape change. And I anticipate there's going to be cruise line down there and probably condos and all kinds of stuff like that. But I know it impacted me. It got me to where, coming out of high school, I'm transitioning into retirement really nice. I learned, particularly once I got myself together, manage my money correctly, set some things in place. And a lot of other people did the same thing. There was a few that was unprepared when the plant went down and they scrambling. But as a whole, I'll say the impact of the plant being there, because I understand it built bridges that's around in them 100 years. When steel and manufacturing was very popular here in this country, it had a tremendous impact. And I guess it must still do. That's why y'all here talking about doing a film, right? Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you covered so much. Thank you so much.